Yo, what's up guys? Blake here bringing you a special video today. On Thursday, I hosted a live stream with the devs at KI talking about PvP, some of the changes that were coming, 5th age, all that good stuff, and I wanted to upload it on YouTube just for people that wanted to watch it again, or if you couldn't make it to the stream. It went really well. We got a bunch of answers to things that we've been asking for a while as a community, and I'm personally really excited for 5th age and just the changes coming in the future, especially with Test Realm coming out in a few weeks. I'm really excited, and I think there's going to be some cool changes coming to PvP that's going to make it more fair, more balanced, and just more interesting and entertaining to play. So I'm really excited, and I hope you guys are too. I just want to say big thanks to all the mods who made it happen. Thank you to Brianna, Emmy, JP, Lilith, Nerd, Sean, Corey, and Thick. You guys are amazing. That chat was going insane. We averaged about like 850 people, I want to say, for the duration of the stream, which is kind of insane. So yeah, they did a great job moderating, and big thanks to the devs as well for, you know, opening up the conversation and just, you know, communicating with us as a community, and it was really cool. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys want more content, I upload daily on YouTube, you know, just really good matches, stuff like that, and I also stream every day on Twitch starting at around 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you guys want to come through and check that out, I'd love to see you guys there. So I hope you guys enjoy and get as excited as I am about PvP, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys. Right now I'm in a call with Ratbeard, Matchmaking, Professor Falmea, and Spark. You guys want to say hello?
I guess you start with me. Hi, this is Ratbeard.
I think I was next. Matchmaking here.
So,
How's it going, everybody?
Hey, I'm Professor Falmea, and we're really excited to be here today, and we're really excited to announce our next PvP-related features for the next test realm, and you'll hear it first. It's an exclusive. This is our official teaser for the next test realm.
Yeah, that's right. This is Spark, and I'm happy to be here. This is going to be a great live stream. Thank you, Blake, for hosting this topic. We are really amped up on this one. This is going to be a fun next few weeks.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and the test realm should be coming pretty soon, and we'll find more information about that in KI Live, which is next Thursday, same time as right now, just a week from today. Are you guys ready to get started?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I made a list of questions. I put as much as I could on there, and we're going to try and get through them really fast because there's a lot of things we want to talk about. And also later on in the stream, we're going to be taking questions from the chat. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to get them in chat, and we might answer them later on. Alrighty. So question number 1. What is happening to the ticket system, and will there be a new currency for 5th age PvP?
Yeah, I guess I can answer that one. I would say that my plan right now is to definitely create a new currency for 5th age PvP. And you know, I have the advantage of looking at some of your other questions that you may be asking, so I don't want to spoil your upcoming questions. But just generally speaking, what I would like to do is I would like for the gear that you acquire in an age to sort of apply to that age, and then when we have a reason to reset the age, which should not occur very often. So I want to have the concept of seasons, which would reset fairly often. So at the end of a season, we might reset the leaderboards, we might reset your rating, or sort of level set the rating, bring them all down a notch, and let people recompete. But gear should last throughout an age, so it gives players something to work towards during that age. But I like the idea of players starting a new age on an even footing, basically, so that you know, the stuff that you had before, you know, we'll set that aside, and now you can come in and sort of grind away for the new stuff, sort of prove your chops.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. Just the concept of making it an even playing field for all players would be really good, because I would incentivize a lot of new players to play PvP. And I really like the idea, too, of adding seasons, because I think that would freshen it up and make it just a lot more fun to keep playing and grinding for rank.
Feedback on that. Part of it, too, is it allows us to give out new rewards that people can chase evenly. You know, how do we price, you know, say a new mount or a PvP specific mount if, you know, you have players already with 100,000 arena tickets saved up?
Yeah, true.
So we want to make sure that everybody can put in the grind and put in the effort and get the, you know, get a fair shake for all the good rewards.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. Alrighty, so moving on to question number 2. What's happening to the duelist gear when 5th age comes around? And this is a big one because I've had so many people ask me, should I save up my tickets? Are they going to take it so that it's no PvP? Should I buy the ring now? So do you guys know what's happening with the duelist gear when 5th age comes around?
Well, I can tell you what I did last time, and people who went through the last test realm will remember there was an issue. We took some stuff off the vendor, some of the gear, and my intentions were the best at that time. So, because I do intend to have new gear and certainly new currency, I didn't want players to necessarily be grinding away for tickets and gear that I thought there would be a good chance that we would sunset. So, just to keep people from doing that, we took them off. Now, some of the feedback that we got was that people would rather, have something to work towards, in the what I would call the sunset years of fourth age. They'd rather have something to work towards.
Right.
Yes, we put those back, but my intention would be to sunset that gear and introduce new gear. So, if it were me, I would probably spend my tickets on things besides the PvP gear. But if you're still enjoying playing, fourth age PvP and you need that gear, then certainly go for that. Because what we won't be saying today is when fifth age will be coming. So it's not right around the corner. Again, I've said several times that fifth age is not going to be sprung on you guys as a surprise. Like, there's enough things in PvP that we want to fix, and you'll see them get fixed over the course of several test realms. That everybody will start to get to a consensus, and that's important to me. We'll know when we think it's ready, and we'll listen to you guys. And when you guys say, "Hey, PvP feels real good. Let's close the books on fourth age and relaunch everybody on even keel on fifth age." So to some degree, you guys are going to be telling us when fifth age is ready, right? So
yeah, I like that.
We're going to get all of our work done. We have a lot of tech work to do, a lot of balancing work to do. We're going to get that all in order. And then, we'll listen to the feedback from the community for you guys to say, it feels good now. We're ready to go.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you guys are having, like, you're waiting for the community. And also, I think it's a good idea because I would much rather, and I know most players in the community would prefer that fifth age is a nice, polished, finished product as opposed to just being rushed and released immediately just to get it out there. So I'm really excited.
Fourth age, especially when it comes to that gear specific. I definitely want to make sure that even in fifth age, even if the fourth age gear isn't what you want to be wearing, for specific stats, I do think it behooves us to, because it does look cool, to allow people to still grind out to get at least the visuals of that set, because it is a pretty good looking set.
I agree.
So I think,
yeah.
I think that's something I would at least like to keep in mind, even on a cosmetic level. So, those mounts and those visuals transfer over, and maybe you can spend the new currency on it for, say, just at least a visual version.
Awesome.
So you're not going to lose out completely just because you missed fourth age. You just picked up Wizard for the first time and all of a sudden you're out of gear. You can never get it. I just don't like that.
So people shouldn't be like stocking up, trying to get as many arena tickets as possible, right?
Probably. Keep playing PvP, and the hope is maybe we can, Ben and I, Rapbeard and I, can discuss what about those saved up tickets. But I would say stop PvP. Keep getting those tickets, keep getting the rewards that you like, and you at least have the visuals, and you'll get the mounts, and you get some of the other stuff. So I wouldn't say yes or no right away, but definitely don't just grind out thinking you're gonna lose everything by the time it
because I know
switches
a lot
over.
of players are like worried about that if they don't have enough tickets ready on every character, they won't be prepared. But it's good to know that that's not an issue. Next question, which is like really, really important, and I know a lot of people have been asking this: will you be making ranked PvP free to play?
All right, I'll take this one. It's something that we've certainly been talking about. It doesn't necessarily behoove us to keep a really cool. Once it's great and we want to get everybody in and playing it, to keep it to members only. We want to look at ways that we can get more people into PvP. And certainly providing ways for free-to-play players to get in is going to be a thing that we definitely want to look into. The one reason that we're a little hesitant on just opening it up is that people could certainly spam and abuse the queues, make a level 1, get in, grief people. So we're going to have to do a little bit of work to mitigate that. But besides that, it's a solvable problem that we definitely want to solve when we feel like the system's ready for everybody to just come in and play.
That's awesome.
It's not an unequivocal, yes, we're going to make it free and unlimited for everybody, but it's certainly something that's on our mind and that we've been discussing.
Well, that's really good because I know a lot of people have complained that PvP is not free to play, but it definitely makes sense there are issues related with it. But that would be awesome if eventually one day PvP was free to play, because that would encourage a lot more players to try it out and to eventually keep playing. So yeah, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. We think that would be a great idea. It may be something that we do a limited system for people who are free to play, like credits per day, that they can just go in and
That's
try
a
it out.
really cool concept. Yeah, I like that. That's really cool.
Just like the treasure tower, how we have 3 credits per day.
Right,
Maybe
yeah.
you get X amount of times that you can jump in and play PvP every day if you're free to play. So
awesome.
that's one consideration. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, so next question on the list is about tournaments. What are your plans for tournaments, and will turn-based make its way to tournaments, or will they remain in the old school format like they are now?
The broader scope of tournaments is, I think, Raptor and I need to really table that down a bit and figure it out. I've always loved the idea of sort of custom rule sets and custom matches and brackets. I think the first thing and foremost is, like you said, we want to focus on ranked PvP, getting that 5th age out the door, and really getting the baseline rules and systems for PvP sort of flushed out. Like you said, you'll tell us when 5th age is ready. Right. And I think once we get to that step, we can start thinking about the tournament system and start thinking about sort of how can we take our current rules and then make fun, custom tournaments with, wacky rules and exciting things, and really just sort of change up the pace of things from time to time. Because I think that would be the most interesting stuff,
Definitely,
just
yeah. Crazy
rule sets that, you just never seen before. Like, infinite pips could be a tournament, and just like go to town. Like how would that look? How would that work? And I know you mentioned turn-based. I know we wanted to keep the old system in, obviously, for those that kind of enjoy that, the going first and always going second.
Right.
So we left that in, and we do have the turn-based tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a way to play turn-based tournaments. Right now, it's just, when it fits on the schedule.
Right.
But part of it, too, is looking at the scheduling system and how we can get more engagement on that, and how, where we can find sort of times to host tournaments. I personally would like to see less frequency of the tournaments and make them more of an event-based thing, sort of how we do the decathlon, or sort of how we do Beast Moon, and fire them up, because then we can give even more, we can throw down leaderboards. We can give out really unique rewards, right? We can say, hey, this is the whatever crazy mode tournament we're doing this week, play your matches and we'll see who ranks up in this 1 to 2 week window, and
right.
Let's get some crazy cool looking rewards for it.
I really like that idea, because it provides us a lot of opportunities to promote it as well and reach out to the community and feel what they think about these things when we can regularly promote it in that way. By the way, I gotta interject here, Blake, you have an amazingly awesome community here.
Thank you.
One person just, in capital letters, of course, Matchmaking, the god is speaking.
That's hilarious.
Awesome.
I wouldn't say that, but yeah, it's pretty long these days. Next video chat, if I'm on, you'll see. It's crazy.
Excited. But yeah, I really appreciate that. I've been working hard to build like a really, just cool, positive vibes, good community, and I think we've really made that in this game. So that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it.
Just one last, speaking of the community part of it, I mean, we see that you guys host your own tournaments and things like that. I know Matt, from a community standpoint, I mean, that's just amazing to see. And we've talked about it in the past, thinking about, could we do something? And this is not saying, when or if, but, it is something we talked about player hosted tournaments or custom rule sets or things that players could create, maybe their own brackets with the game supporting them. Mm-hmm. We've talked and we've tossed around that idea, and it may be a future years down the road idea, but I do like that concept, and it's something that I'm definitely interested in exploring. I think the community and players, especially PvPers, would love that. So.
Oh yeah, people would really, really like that. That'd be a fantastic idea. Alrighty, so next question, this goes back to just regular PvP. Do you guys have any plans to alter the current planning phase? Some people have complained that the 20-second timer may be too short to make decisions. And the current mechanic also encourages players to race to play their card so that their opponent can't draw and discard. Because in the current system, you can actually draw and discard from your side deck twice in one round. So do you guys have any plans to change that, or is that how it is intended?
Yeah, so the original concept was we lowered the time because of the waiting for the opponent.
Right.
You know, because the original planning phase was always 30 seconds at most, right?
Mhm.
You know, now it's 40 seconds. So we were just worried about match times.
I agree.
We the main thing is we collected data on that, so we're looking at that. You know, and if the match times are within reason that we could extend them, which I think they are, we can always extend the planning phase. We can add it to 25, 30 seconds. You know, if people feel like the 20 seconds just isn't enough, we just want to make sure that we aren't bogging down matches too much.
Right,
And,
yeah.
you know, part of the element of our game, part of the PvP is, I mean, even if you have 30 seconds, you know, you still have that timer. I mean, there are even times 30 seconds don't always seem like enough. You know, it just depends on the scenario and the situations you're in, or even if you're in a team battle. So we're definitely exploring that. I think we could always extend it. When it comes to the planning, oh, go ahead.
Let me jump in on that. I mean, you know, I see that actually as a feature. I mean, you know, if I'm able to make my decision faster, then it behooves me to, you know, to do that, because I know that it will affect my opponent's ability to think and react to me. And you know, I know that you guys complain about RNG all the time. So
Right.
you know, if we can't put some kind of focus on the ability to know your deck and play your deck quickly, then I mean, come on, there's got to be some skill involved in this somewhere. So just
Right.
in a maybe 20 seconds might be too short, but just in a general sense, the idea that me playing quickly denies my opponent the ability to think through his turn, that's a strength in my opinion.
I agree with that as well, as long as each player has the same amount of time to pick their card. So I agree completely.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like you said, the time would matter in that case too. You know, let's say we gave each person a minute. If somebody clicks their card right away, you've lost a whole minute, right, of your time. So it's the same in any sort of system. But like I said, when it comes to discarding and adjusting, right, you only get the one draw, so you're not getting. If your opponent is going slower, you have more. I call it thinking time and planning time. But yeah, like Ben said, it is a skill. So if the players are quick and they're taking their turns, you know, it's sort of like that speed chess where, hey, you know, you got the time and that's sort of work with it. It's just part of the skill. But like I said, we're listening. We're keeping an eye on it, and you know, it's not a no, but you know, right now we're okay with it at the moment. We'll see.
Yeah, the chat is kind of blowing up right now about RNG and shads.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about that, guys.
Oh,
so,
don't worry, I got some juicy questions. Just give us some time. Don't worry.
Don't get you know, don't get tunnel vision on some of this stuff. You know, I hope that people walk away from this conversation and think about the totality of what we discussed.
Right.
You know, Blake's got you know, a few questions he wants to run through in order, and you know, by the time we get to the end of it, we will either have answered all the questions, or you guys will have given us the information we need to go off and make more changes.
Definitely, yeah. Don't worry, guys. We will be talking about chat. Just let us go through the. You know, we're just ramping it up. So next question. This one's a pretty good one. Do you have any plans on changing how Maycasts work in PvP? Maycasts in general are RNG factors that can sway the outcome of an entire match, especially Shatter. Maycast ores like Infallible and Brace are also extremely powerful.
Well, I can answer two things right away. Shatter and Infallible had a bug. They've always had a bug, and I fixed that.
Okay.
So the Maycast Shatter and the Maycast Infallible were going off 2.5 times more frequently than it should have been in the logic. So that's part of why those ones were hyped up and why there was a problem.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Sorry. I don't want to interrupt you, Matt, but you know, and part of that was because of the change to turn-based. So you know, the way that the code was looking at these, it was a bug that was hiding because the turns work differently, and it wasn't until we sort of changed that it came up. That's why it seemed like they really started popping off.
Oh, I noticed right when turn-based came out. I noticed, especially Infal. I was like, my pet is just spamming it all the time. But yeah,
and
I noticed when that came out.
I'll just say that you know, I'll hand it back to Matt in a second, but you know, all of the Maycast logic has to be audited. So we're going to go back over all the logic for Maycast and look at it and make sure that they're working the way that they're supposed to. And I'll let Matt talk more on that if he wants. Go ahead.
I mean, give a little under the hood. I mean, you know, as many designers over many years, Maycasts are basically just sort of code logic that are attached to the pet. And there were systems, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago that we didn't, you know, there are systems we have now that we didn't have. So to get sort of some of the logic working is, you know, it worked, but the numbers weren't as exactly as you wanted. So things were firing more or less frequently. So And Ratbeard, has been on me about this too. We got to do an audit. We're gonna go through all the Maycasts because each one has its own individual logic. And so we have to go through each one and clean it up and make sure like we don't have those infouls, make sure we don't have those shatters popping off. And then from there, obviously we'll rebalance and respec to make sure that not only is it measured against the rate that it fires, but the power at which the spell you're getting. Because a shatter is extremely powerful when it goes off. So it shouldn't be going off as much as, say, a simple sort of hex trap. In my, but a lot of it was sort of a standard issue of Maycasts were flat, depending on the time they were made, right? Percentage here, percentage there, or based on player activity and what players do in combat. But a lot of it can add up, especially in team fights. So we got to really look into that. I know one of the things players mentioned too is, maybe we limit Maycasts per round or Maycasts per fight. We sort of started that logic, with the pet will cast system, and sort of seeing some of that. But we could talk about things like that where maybe at least your Maycast can't fire more than once in a single round at the very least. I mean, that can help
especially
the chain.
fire pets that do like 3 Maycasts in one turn.
Yeah, let me jump in on that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons that we added the will cast was that so players could have a choice of either something that's more predictable and they can choose when it goes off, but it might have a cooldown, or whether they want to rely on their Maycasts, which could fire more often but are more unpredictable. And I've been thinking for a while about just sort of polling people on this and seeing what they think. Some options would be, neither will cast nor Maycast but not will cast but not Maycast, or both, right? So there's 4 different ways that we could set that up, and I may throw a quick poll out there and see what people think. And I'm going to guess, I don't know, I'm not sure which one would win. I think it all kind of comes down to whether you've built up a great Maycast bet and you're winning a lot, or whether you haven't built up a great bet and you're losing a lot. So.
Right.
But I will poll that, and we'll see what players think on that, and then try to customize it for you. And I'm trying. I'm generally I've been kind of helping out on the design side a bit on the will cast. So I'm trying to pick stuff that I think could have a use in PvP someday, even though the will casts are currently not allowed in PvP.
Right.
But I'm trying to pick stuff now that I think that once we make that decision, if we decide to allow them, that they won't be instantly broken in PvP. So. But as always, I expect you guys to let me know if I missed the mark.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great because some Maycasts really need to be balanced or at least looked at, especially Shatter and Infallible.
Yeah. So when Test Realm comes out, as we have the secret announcement coming up. I mean, I know Leah or Falmea already mentioned it, but you'll see those changes and. It's firing as it is intended now, so it'll be less frequent.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
Hopefully that'll help, but we still have those out.
For Shatter and Infall or just Shatter?
Shatter and Infall.
Okay,
with 2 talent. Give it.
Yeah,
it's in the patch notes somewhere when we. So.
Alrighty. So moving on to another juicy question. Do you have any plans to make each school more unique and distinct in their gear combinations and setup abilities? For example, Ice at max level should be more oriented to defensive stats, sacrificing offensive stats like base spell damage, critical, and pierce, while an offensive school like Fire should have to sacrifice defensive stats like health, block, and resist. And I think this is really important because you see Fires running around with like 8,000 health, which is a lot at max level, and then you see Ices that have, similar damage to some other schools, still really good pierce and can still critical. So do you guys have any plans on kind of making each school more unique, like having Ice being that defensive school, with a lot of crit, block, resist, and health, and then making, the more offensive schools really more offensive?
I'd like to see that. I mean, that's one of my that's just a personal goal of my own, is to make each school we use the term silo, right? Each school should have their own thing that they're good at,
right?
And I see some stuff in the chat going by, and this kind of answers that point. People will ask, why was it broken for so long, or why does it go this way, or why does it go that way? People have to realize that designers and developers come and go on the team, and so everybody, and not just even on the design team. We even have changes in leadership higher up than that. So things change basically,
right?
And I would say that my goal, personally, would be to see the schools get more of their identity back. And over the years, there was a push for things like everybody should have some kind of healing, or everybody should have some kind of AOE, or everybody should have resist. And so in order to make the PvE experience better, we sort of relaxed the what we felt are restrictions on the schools, so that every school could get through PvE a little easier. Now, what I would say, my preference would be, bring back the identity of each of the schools, and then if necessary, we can go back to the game, the PvE experience, and we can make it easier if necessary, so that players of any school can get through it. Right. So rather than rebalance to the player side, rebalance that on the mob side. So me personally, it's really important to see the schools with their character back again. And I'll just go ahead and say, although I play a death main, man, I really want to see Myth get some cool stuff.
I agree, absolutely.
And because part of that is because the way that the minions are working in the Beast Moon right now. There's some really cool stuff that the minions do in Beast Moon, just effects that you can trigger just by the fact that you either have a minion or don't.
Right.
Not even necessarily, obviously every school has some ability to consume their minion, you heal back or whatever. But there's ways that we can actually leverage having a minion. You can get additional effects from your spells by having a minion out there. I think that'd be really cool. And of course, if we can make it work, I'd love to see the Myth players, or anybody with a minion, quite frankly, have a lot more control over what those minions are doing in combat.
If you could have more control over what your minions do, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I think it would end up being a huge power boost, to put the human intelligence suddenly behind the minions. So it might be it might be too much. We might have to just maybe tweak the AI a little bit to make it a little bit better. But I think minions are an underutilized portion, and given that that's kind of Myth's thing,
right?
I'd like to see them really jump up. Sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. I'll let Matt.
I do want to. Oh, sorry. I was going to say I do want to jump in and say just something like that would be a huge change to the back end of the game. So while we could say, yeah, we might want to tweak the AI a little here and there, that's on the level of like a huge overhaul. So I wanted to kind of reset expectations there and say that's not something that would be coming anytime soon.
I know there's I know there's things that we can do. There's some shortcuts we may be able to make. So
sure, but
we can make some design magic happen there.
Oh yeah, there's a few little.
All right, I trust your design magic there. I just wanted to we've talked. And I've been on the team since 2007. I've seen everything come and go. So the more control over minions is something that we've talked about over and over and over, and we've written up plans and talked about it. And while there's certainly things that we can do that might be easier, it's a pretty big change. So on that, I wouldn't expect that to come up anytime really soon, to have a fully controllable minion where you can just pick the spells.
Right.
Now you're just making me feel like you've challenged us. That's all.
You know what? Make it happen.
That's a lot of work for me. That's so much design work. Yeah, sorry about the static, guys. I know a couple people mentioned it. I don't know what's up with my mic. As long as you can kind of understand me, I'm not going to try to risk it and replug and do any of that stuff.
It's still pretty clear. It's just a little bit of static in the background. That's all.
Yeah, but I mean, just for the whole school-specific stuff, I can kind of. This could be a whole discussion in and of itself, but we aim. Each school kind of excels in certain areas. Even with the, but then you kind of run into flaws where you have ice pushing defense, and as you know, the resist system itself is a flaw. So ice is just so strong because of how, it doesn't matter how much damage a storm is going to put out with crit. I mean, if the resist is if you're going to PvP against a set player with 140% resist, you're going to have a 1,000,000% damage. You're not going to do anything, right?
Yeah,
so
unless you have the pierce to match it, which you can't really do. Even if somebody's immune, you can't really do anything. Even if you have Shriken and found good base pierce.
Yeah, so correcting that, but the aim that I try to do is, if you look at gear, you'll see where the schools start to excel, and I think giving them spells and utilities that make them feel unique and feel different. I'm from the school of where I think anybody, you can kind of do what you want to do as a school, but you may have to sacrifice more. I don't mind if life life should be the easiest and best at healing. But that doesn't mean life shouldn't be able to do damage, because, if they can't, then the PvE experience of life is just so drastically different than Storm. But I do think if life wants to do damage, they'll have to sacrifice a lot more to get that damage up.
Right.
And same for Storm and other things, and we saw this. I started to see this, when Darkmoor first came out, and I think a lot of the community will remember this. Is we were seeing a lot of players that would only take Storm hitters.
Right. A lot of people do that in
if
PvE.
Storm hitter, they weren't going to take anybody else. So I was like, well, why aren't they taking Fire? Why aren't they taking Myth? Those schools should be the next in line to hit. So we had to look at them, and that's why you sort of saw Fire get that little bump up it needed, and you saw Myth I'm trying to work with Myth more as well, and I'm constantly, trying to get them up.
Yeah,
as
well. Some love.
And you see that coming up with them. So the hope is that those are your kind of, your focused hitters at the very least, and then you kind of move down to your deaths and your off schools that you want. So sort of something to keep in mind.
Alrighty, so yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit out of order here just because this question is, I think, a really nice segue. So the next question I have for you guys is, do you have any plans of further separating PvP and PvE into two separate entities? Some spells and mechanics are balanced for PvE, but are not viable or can even be overpowered in PvP. Weaver, do you have any plans on reworking spells and doing something similar to what you did with, for example, Bad Juju, which has a different mechanic in PvE and PvP?
Ben, you want to start with that one? I know you have your opinion on PvP.
Well, yeah, well, I was actually going to start this chat by saying that you guys will not always hear me and Matt agree. Like, Matt and I talk things out, so we don't necessarily agree eye to eye. And if you hear us disagreeing in this live stream, don't be alarmed. We consider debate to be healthy. Now,
right.
my personal stand on that is that a spell should either be balanced or not, right? And so if it's not working in PvP or PvE, then there's a good chance that it's not balanced, period. And although I don't have a problem with perhaps a treasure card that exists in a different way in two different ways, because that's low overhead for us to do that, I don't like the idea of actually creating a separate, a fork in the code to handle something differently in PvP and PvE. And so my default position on that would be, if it's broken in PvP, just ban it in PvP, and walk away from it, and then we can spend our resources on things that are more important. Or, if it's just broken flat out in both PvE and PvP, then we need to balance it. It needs to be rebalanced. It needs to be fixed for the whole game. So my general opinion of this is that PvP and PvE should feel more or less the same, right? And the whole purpose of PvP is to get in with the wizard that you play and question in PvE, and that you've been grinding on and gathering all this cool gear, and to take that guy that you identify with, or girl, that you identify with in PvE, and take them into PvP and see how they do. And so to me, it's important that the experience feels not somewhat similar, but as similar as possible, right?
Right.
And so, the more exceptions we have to make to that rule, the less I like it. Now, having said all of that, you picked out Bad Juju as an example. There may be times that we just don't have a choice other than to make a separate version for PvP. But I will tell you that I will always start from the position of either they need to work in both, or we'll just ban it in PvP.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I understand that. That's actually a really good point too, because if it doesn't, like, if it's broken, it's no point in making it just like viable in one and not the other. So that makes a lot of sense. So are you guys ready to get on to some of the more juicy questions? There were some other questions I want to ask, but I feel like it's better to save it for the end if we do have time, just because I really want to cover the other one. So you guys ready?
Let's give Matt a chance to weigh in on that if you wanted to. Did you have something more you want to add to that, Matt?
Oh, I mean, the only thing I was thinking for, especially for a 5th age too, is I know some PvPers are like, well, I don't want to have to grind PvE content to be comparable with PvP. And I do think that there's giving alternative routes or something we can think about in 5th age, where, that 5th age PvP gear should be just as comparable as the player who grinded in the dungeons, in terms of stat balance. And then it boils down to your skill, your deck building, and all that to get your rank. And I think that's important, because I think, some people want a PvP and some people just want a PvE, which is fine. But, there are people that want to mix and match and, 50-50, 80-20. And I think, somebody who does 80% PvP and 20% PvE, and somebody who does 80% PvE and 20% PvP, they should be comparable, right? I mean, they should be able to go head to head against each other. Right. And the investment should pay out as long as they're working towards improving their wizard. I think
that's a fantastic idea. That'd be really cool to see that implemented in the game.
Bolt.
So,
it's not 80-20. Somebody in chat said 80-20 like Insane Bolt. Insane Bolt's not 80-20. It used to be, but it's fixed. Well, fixed-ish. It's not 80-20. It's something else.
Okay. Okay. Are you guys ready for the juicy questions now?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so now we get to like the real, the meat and potatoes, like the really good questions. I know you guys have been asking about shads, all that stuff. We're about to go now. So the first question I have, and this one is really big. Pierce and resist are a huge part of PvP, especially at max level, but even low levels, pierce and resist are huge. Do you have any plans of changing the mechanics of pierce and resist or adding a cap to either or both of them? And will a resist cap ever be introduced into PvP and tournaments?
I can answer this real quick. Yes. Yes, we are.
That's nice.
So, in terms of cap, though, the problem is a cap would have to be put in because why? Because the system isn't working, right? So the first thing we need to do is, and Ratbeard can go on this, we've spent many a day and hours discussing and planning and spreadsheeting the system. The goal here is to definitely do a stat rebalance. We're going to be moving forward with changing certain stats and how they function and how they work. And damage, pierce, resist, those are definitely ones that will need to be addressed. And it's sort of a yes and no answer. Yes, we will fix it. And the hope is that because we fix it, you don't need to cap it because the system will sort of self-cap. A system of diminishing returns at the top end and more of a measured stat against your opponent as opposed to, well, I have 140% resist, so I'm just going to defeat anybody at any level above or below. We don't want that anymore. So the plan is to, design a more scalable system that as you level, you are increasing against those below you, and you are have to compare and keep up, in a sort of, tug of war measure against stats. But also to the point that if somebody is outpacing you, you're not completely getting obliterated unless the stats are so high out of the league that they've just outstatted you. Then you're going to start seeing. I mean, you obviously probably should have lost the match anyway because they've outgeared you and they've sort of played you a bit. But there's, as opposed to just, well, I farmed defense, so that's it. Game over. See you later.
Right.
Yeah, I got the set shield.
There's a lot to. I mean, this question touches on a lot of stuff that we will talk about and that we haven't even talked about yet. I mean, you're sort of, when you're asking about pierce and resist, to some degree, you're asking about, can I set against other players? Should immunity be a thing? Should stalling an opponent be a thing?
Right.
So I will quickly try to address a few of those things. I would say that I don't think that complete immunity is necessarily good for the game. I understand that it feels cool for players, and I would like to find a way for players to perhaps preserve immunity or at least feel like an awesome tank without it making it a strategy in PvP to sit there and do nothing until your opponent feels like quitting. And I can say unequivocally, I am not going to support that as a strategy in PvP. Now, that's not the same thing as saying I'm not supporting tanking or I'm not supporting healing. I'm just saying I don't support the idea of basically turtling up and doing nothing until your opponent just gets frustrated and quits. I think if you want to outlast your opponent, or run them out of cards or something, then we, Kingsisle, should give you guys additional ways to make that a strategy, right? If you want to tank, then you need to have an arsenal of active things, of offensive things that you can do that makes your tanking feel like a strategy as opposed to just frustrating your opponent until they quit. Now, that's going to mean we're going to be rebalancing all the stats probably. People have been mentioning in the chat the percentages, and we're going to try to get away from percent-based stats across the board for everything, right? We want all of our stats to be able to grow, and so we'll be getting away from that. And we'll talk about shads in a second because that rolls into that.
Yep.
But we're going to get there, and there will be changes to some stats. And I know that there are ice PvPers out there who like their awesome resist.
Oh, they love it. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I can say is that if we change it, or when we change it, because we are changing it, but the manner in which we change resist, it's a goal for me to make sure that if you were the best at resisting before we changed it, you will be the best at resisting after we change it, right? So everybody needs to be affected in more or less the same way. And so while we might not see immunity, and again, that's not decided, I'm sort of looking at it, while we might not see immunity, you will still be the best resist guy out there after we make our changes, and other players will know when they face you that you are a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, and I agree completely too. I think playing defensively and, you know, being a tank should absolutely be a viable strategy. It's just when you can still have an insane damage output, or you have so much defense, you know, whether it be you're immune or you have a ton of resist to where your opponent can't even touch you, that's obviously not okay. But just, you know, tanking in general and a defensive strategy isn't bad at all, especially for a school like ICE that's made to be, you know, the tank school and play defensively.
Right, and you know, you could say the same thing about Life. I mean, Life has always had this weird place in PvP because it's the healing school. Life makes perfect sense as a school in PvE. Like, everybody knows what you're supposed to do. Oh, I'm the healer, right? And so Life can feel awesome and cool in PvE. It's different to take that into PvP, especially when, you know, when the school identity has been watered down and other schools can heal as well as you do. You know, and it just doesn't necessarily feel as cool to out heal your opponent, I guess.
Right.
So, you know, there are some tricky problems for us to solve to make all of these schools that have very distinct personalities in PvE have a distinct personality that actually works in PvP.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Alrighty, so you ready for the next question to finally talk about shads?
Sure.
Alrighty, so shadow pips are one of the biggest factors of RNG in the game at high level. Shadow hits create way too much value for their cost and are extremely RNG based in the nature of how you acquire them, especially when you're already in a shadow form like Shrike. Do you have any plans to bounce or rework shadow hits in general or make them less powerful?
Okay, so I feel like since we could spoil this one a little bit now that we've kind of implemented a good chunk of it.
Yeah, go ahead and spoil it.
Yeah, so we've been working on this, but we came up, so Shadow Pip and Shadow Pip percentage stat is now going to be converted to a rating. And you are going to be measured against the shadow rating of your opponent or your opponents. And it's going to be a lot more controlled. So the shadow RNG is sort of mitigated a lot more. So that at the end of the day, it's not just, oh, I have a flat 30%, so every chance I get it. No, it's whatever your opponent has. So you're going to need to build that shadow rating. We also built in that you will probably not get a shadow pip 2 turns in a row, if ever. Maybe if you're about 100 levels higher than your opponent, you might be able to get a shadow pip twice in or one round after the other. But at the end, you know, all the gear that has shadow pip percentage is now converted to a rating, and it is also based on level. So your 3% might be your 3% level 100 robe is now it's gonna be 3% equivocally, but the rating of it at 100, the value is say 10. At 130, that 3% is, you know, 15 on that. So, and part of that, what that means is now when shadows are generated, it's measured against your opponent and their stats. So it's, again, that tug of war. It's that comparative value. So some matches you may have a better, you know, roll on the board to get it. And other matches you might be being outpaced by another opponent's stat. So you're just going to have to kind of play it. But it's a lot more fine-tuned. You're going to see a strong average of rolls. You're going to have the outliers, but they're not going to be as bad as, you know, somebody gets shadow pit 3 times in a row. Right. You're going to see that.
I'm just chuckling to myself because this is when a system designer is asked to explain something, he focuses on the numbers. And I think one of the coolest things about this is the visual difference, right? So we're adding a shadow gauge basically to the HUD on the screen, so both opponents will see how close their opponent is to popping a shadow pip, and so you'll see their gauge filling up over time. And so, in addition to making it a lot more regulated, you know, and I'll use the term normalized. I hope everyone knows what that means. So, you know, a shadow pip I think should pop about once every 3 rounds on average, right? Assuming that you and your opponents are both equally invested in shadow gear, about once every 3 rounds. If you're dominating your opponent in terms of, you know, if you want to, you know, embrace shads and really spike your shad gear, and your opponent hasn't done that, then you may get shads more often than that. So you know, it's important to maintain your shad stat both from a defensive standpoint, just so you don't get dominated, and of course, if you want to use it, you'll need to have it as well. But you know, I wanted to mention quickly that you know, the other thing that matters is that you will see how close your opponent is to getting that next shadow pip. You know, if their gauge is, you know, if their meter's at the bottom because they just got a shadow pip, you'll see that. And as that gauge fills up and gets closer to generating a shadow pip, you'll see that as well. So you will have an opportunity to see and react to that. And Falmea,
I'm laughing here because we're getting like dangerously close to other words.
sorry.
I see.
No, it's cool. I'm laughing here myself. It's all good. I had a question actually for us. I've been just for the community so they know, I've been working on some notes, shall we say, and I swear, as I was looking over these notes, Shadow Pip was in them. Am I mistaken, or is the community looking forward to some of these changes sooner than later?
Oh yeah, definitely. Next test realm, this will be coming to the test realm. Y'all get to see it pretty soon, in the flesh, and experience it yourself. Well, I guess in the pixels, not in the flesh.
That is really cool. So that update with the shads will be in the test realm.
Yeah, that's one of the first things that we've been working on that will go out.
Should we go ahead and pivot to a shadow spell audit? Talk about that now.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
So they're like every 3 rounds. First of all, it's every 3 rounds is the average of having the best in gear. If you're going against a boss, like a boss level mob, you're probably going to see 6, 7, and 8 rounds before you get a shadow pip. If you're just in average gear, if you're not spiking up to take on bosses and stuff like that, every 3, and that's average. So you could maybe get 3 at best. 4, so you're looking more closer to 3 to 5. Is your safe window, and then you could push it down to 2 if you really are outpacing an opponent. But the biggest thing is because you guys were saying, well, even if it's every 3, it feels really powerful to the target. Well, yeah, but the good news is we will be doing a wonderful audit of all shadow and shadow enhanced spells coming up as well, and that includes nerfing things.
Things really good, yeah.
Things like Weaver, things like Glowbug, they are not off the table. They are being looked at actively in terms of balance, how they function, what their damage output is versus what they do utility-wise, and they will be reworked to be balanced in line with that 3-round average in mind. The bugs, people. I see all the bugs so much.
Yeah, and people are saying a lot about bugs.
Yeah, I love that story that Matt shared with me about the shadow, the glow bugs.
Oh, glow bugs. I can say that one. I just real quick, it's my funny one. So yeah, everybody knows Glowbug is very, very strong. And I remember there's a community, I was like, hey, I think I should nerf Glowbugs. They're like, don't nerf it, we need it. So I said, okay, so I left it, and I put Glowbug on mobs just as a regular spell, and instantly players complained because the community was so upset because they're like, the Glowbug's too powerful. But it was exactly what the players had against the mobs. So actually, mobs use a nerfed version of Glowbugs when they attack. If you notice, they usually remove 3 or 4 charms. They don't usually blast out your whole thing. So
I actually didn't notice that. That's interesting. So the damage is the same, but the charms, it doesn't take away all. It just takes away like a cap amount.
Yeah, a lot of the mobs you'll see is, some of the mobs in Polaris, a lot of them in Imperia, Mirage, and stuff like that. They only really, if you get Glowbugs, they don't completely blast everything off the board. They only do about 3.
Interesting. Well, I actually never noticed that. So, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Well, you would notice if you blew everything out. So.
Alrighty, so yeah, I'm really excited to test out this new Shadow update. So that will be in the test run, which will come to the game in the next few upcoming weeks, right?
Yeah, it should be coming up. We don't necessarily want to announce the date because it'll be ready when it's ready, but it should be pretty soon. It's our
I think we'll have more to say about it on KI Live next Thursday.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear more information about that and then try it out in the test room.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so next question on the list, which also has to do with shads, is getting shadow pips and using shadow hits in Shrike is a major problem in PvP. Do you have any plans of introducing a shadow pip lock or cooldown? For example, if you get a shadow pip or use a shadow pip, you should not be able to get or use another one for at least X many rounds. This would significantly decrease the RNG factor associated with shadow pips. And I know a huge problem that a lot of people in the PvP community complain about is somebody will go into Shrike and they don't have any shads when they go into Shrike, but that final round or 2 rounds or even the first round into Shrike, they get a shad, and because they got that shad in Shrike, they're able to win the game, and had they have not gone that shad, they would have lost. So do you have any plans to affect those kind of shad mechanics?
Yeah, so, well, luckily we have the new rating system coming in. So the first thing I think is really just seeing how the new Shadow Pip rating mechanic works, especially when players go into Strike, and seeing what that sort of solves. I think players could still obviously generate a Shadow Pip in Strike, but not at the rate you were seeing before. So the hope is to bring that issue back a little bit. Now, is it still powerful? Yes. But, Strike to me is a telltale sort of move. You know what's happening. They're going to hit you. So to me, it's a very sort of like, could you plan for it? The hope is you can. And I think part of it, too, is the trade-off. I think I was really thinking about this the other day, is the trade-off for Strike isn't really – there's no detriment to it. And I think, because you're getting so much Pierce and it is so offensive, that maybe instead of that healing reduction, we just flat knock your resist out. What if in Strike form you have minus 100% resist? Wow, is that the trade-off? Now, in theory, with the new rating system, we can just zero out your rating and you'll never generate a shadow. Or, we could mess with sort of those sort of factors as well. So It's not off the table, but I do want to see how the new rating system plays with Strike first. And again, you guys will give us great feedback and let us know. And then if Strike is still hitting those problems with the new rating, then we know, okay, it's time to really cut Strike, off at the knees a little bit and take it down a peg. First get the rating in, get feedback, and then we're closing in on some adjustments definitely to Strike. And we've already made a few adjustments to Backlash and things like that. So obviously we will continue to examine Strike itself.
I think that's a fantastic idea, because Strike is one of those cards that can either be really powerful and just kind of overpowered, or it's like you need it to deal with Jades or Ices, and even with that, they just set shield every round and you can't do it. So I think being able to test out this new system of shads would be like really cool, and if you guys get to collect data on that, I think that's also really cool. So I'm excited for that. Because yeah, shads in Strike, even if you plan it with like a gauge, I think being able to use a shad while you have that much Pierce going is very overpowered. But obviously, if you also continue to tweak shads and balance them a little bit more, that won't be as much of an issue as it is now. So I think the next question on the list, we already talked about Strike. So the next question I have on here is kind of regarding Strike. I know a lot of people have asked about it, and I've advocated it myself personally. But will dispel blocks, which would work essentially the same way as stun blocks, be introduced into the game?
About when you get a dispel, that dispel block that comes on to sort of protect you from the spam. If you're asking, like, could we get that as a card spell that we can cap?
Like, how stun block works, literally that card, but called dispel blocks, and it would provide you with 1 or 2 shields to prevent somebody from dispelling you.
That as a card, I mean, it wouldn't be too difficult to actually make that, and we could definitely discuss what implications that have. That may actually be something that I would want as a PvP only spell. I know that's a little interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Just because there are some boss mechanics and there are some logic issues with fights. I can think of like 3 just off the top of my head that are designed and factored in with the concept of knowing that players couldn't block dispels. So if we do add that element in, we'd have to look to see if it circumnavigates into the PvP content, but we could definitely make it as a PvP only, which I think would be, I don't think we have anything that's PvP only other than gear, right? We don't have a spell specifically.
Right, yeah, there's no spells that are only PvP only. There's some spells that are
but I think that
PvP, but yeah.
So it's definitely something we could think about. Part of my plan was, that dispel spam, especially in team fights, how to sort of mitigate and work around that.
Right.
To get that to sort of stop. But like I said, if we're thinking it's where it needs to be and the spamming is still an issue, then yeah, maybe we could do that 2-card dispel block.
Right.
And kind of see how that plays out. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a very interesting, a good idea. It's something we can discuss and think about.
Right, yeah, because personally, I'm an advocate for it. I think it would be a good idea, but obviously only if changes are made to Strike and stuff like that, because a lot of people are saying, Dispel is one of the few ways to counter Strike, and I agree absolutely. Like I said, Strike is one of those cards that can be very overpowered, but I think if Strike was changed and Shads as well, I think the idea of a Dispel block could be pretty cool. So, yeah. Alrighty, so next question on the list. Let's see. Okay, so now we're getting into kind of like matchmaking and that kind of thing. So Q sniping and setting are major problems that need to be addressed, especially because of how easy it is to do. Some people are really good at it. They know exactly how to snipe people. Also in tournaments, you know exactly who you're going against. So do you guys have any plans to combat or deter people who snipe and set?
Yeah. So this is not something that we'll have in the next update, but we are working on it. We have a couple different ways to address that. I mean, the first way, certainly in ranked, is with the matchmaking system, which I think we'll get into more detail in a moment.
Right.
But with a proper matchmaking server that is making better matches and with a healthy PvP population, it should be a lot harder to predict, I guess, who you're going to be matched up against. And the second thing I'd like to add is the concept of an equipment set, basically. So when you queue for your match, the gear that you queue with is the gear that you keep. We'll allow changes.
Fantastic idea.
Yeah, we'll allow changes to your deck, like you can change your spells out, but you can't change your equipment out once you have queued for a match. Basically, we'll snapshot the gear that you have, and we'll make sure that we put that gear back on you as soon as your match starts.
Right. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea, because then people would be able to, use whatever gear set they want when they go into ranked. But then when they get a match, they can't, based on who they know their opponent is, they can't just go with certain gear.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to, in general, I'd like to, probably reduce the amount of information that we give to players, in different places, so that you just don't know who you're getting.
Yes, that as well too.
I think we might have to handle it a little bit differently for tournaments, because there's time between matches where we have to worry about those things. So it might be a little bit different than a single ranked match, but I'm enthusiastic about the idea. It may work.
That's cool, yeah, because I know a lot of people also complain, because in tournaments you know exactly who you're going up against, and some people will look for the opponent they're going and then change their gear and deck. Obviously, it would be harder to do, like, you can't make it so your player, the player can't like update their deck, right? But you could make it, for example, to where you sign up for a tournament, you have to use that gear for the entirety of the tournament. I know it's like 4 matches and that's longer, but I think that would be a good idea to do. So the next question I have on the list is this. What are your plans to address boosting for rank in PvP? The leaderboards, especially the top 200 spots, is riddled with people who have boosted for rank, which highly discourages players from grinding for a spot on the leaderboards and undermines the effort and skill required for a legitimate player to place on the leaderboards.
So the matchmaking system will address this in a variety of ways, and I don't want to talk too much about how we intend to do that, because I don't want to give the boosters any ammunition.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't want them to necessarily figure out how we intend to do that. But the matchmaking system will make it much more difficult to boost. And so, obviously, I feel like it's always playing whack-a-mole with these guys. In ways, it's fun to see who can outsmart the other.
Right.
But it's important to me that we fix it. And the other thing I'll just mention briefly is that I would like to see the leaderboards turn over more regularly, right? So
I agree, yeah.
The advantage to boosting up onto the leaderboards, it shouldn't be a thing that you feel like you can get up there and have your name up there, memorialized as a cheater for years.
Right.
So we'll try to make the leaderboards turn over more often. But again, I think the matchmaking system, which, if I'm following your order of questions here, might be the next thing we talk about.
Right.
I think the matchmaking system has ways that we will discuss, and it should be obvious with people how it'll discourage boosting. And then the other thing is that we have some stuff that we're going to do under the hood to try to detect that kind of behavior and weed those matches out. And if necessary, we'll weed those people out. So, I really don't have any. I have zero tolerance for people who want to ruin the fun of other people.
Right, I agree completely.
So we'll have to see what we can do to do that. And of course, some of that stuff will be auto detection, and some of it will require some some effort on our part, some human intervention at times. But it is important to me that the leaderboards. I mean, to me, that's the reason to PvP. It's an important thing. So preserving the integrity of that is important to me.
Alrighty, so the last question I have ties into what you just talked about, Ratbeard. So how will matchmaking change in the future for 5th Age and for PvP? We already talked about setting and sniping, but do you guys have any plans to change, how, for example, somebody without Shadow Magic, like a Grandmaster or Legend or an Archmage player, could go against somebody that does have Shadow Magic? Do you have any plans of making any kind of change to matchmaking that would prevent that from happening or create more fair matches? Because oftentimes you get, a high-ranked player who's obviously very good at the game go against somebody who's lower ranked but has much better stats from gear, better spells, and they're just at a severe disadvantage despite them being a clearly in general better player.
Yeah, I'll take this one unless Matt specifically wants to, but I doubt it. I'll describe. It won't be brief, but I'll describe how the matchmaking system will work. And of course, we're going to need feedback on that. And as always, I will caveat this with the fact that the matchmaking server is going to depend on a healthy population of players in there, right? So we got to have players in there in order for it to make good matches. So what the matchmaking server will do is it will start to basically, as players enter the queue, it will sort them by criteria. The top criteria is what we're calling tier, and you could consider that, say, beginner, intermediate, or expert, or you could call it novice, legendary, exalted. But basically, the beginner tier is characters who don't have any crit and they don't have any shadow pips. The intermediate tier will be players who have crits but don't yet have shads, so that might be level. And Matt can correct me on this. Let's say 60 to 100 or 60 to 99 will be the intermediate tier, and then the top tier, tier 3, will be players who have shads. So the first thing that we'll look at when we're the matchmaking server is sorting players is tier. So all the tier 1 players will sort together, all the tier 2s, and then all the tier 3s. Then the next thing we'll look at is your rank. The rank is the same stuff that you guys are familiar with. Private, corporal, sergeant, all the way up to warlord. Rank is going to be, this is not set in stone yet, but probably I will make rank a high water mark. So once you earn captain, for example, you're a captain. You can lose rating, but you can't lose your rank. So rank is the second thing we'll look at. So we're going to sort you by tier, then we're going to sort you by rank, then we're going to sort you by rating. And the rating system is almost certainly going to change. The current rating system is just a sort of a flat value, and I would much rather use more of a chess system, like an ELO. So I'll be looking into, I'll start with ELO, and I'll look at some other systems that might work for that, and we'll look at, companion games and something that works right. But rating itself will change. And we can use something more like ELO, assuming that we're going to have more regular resets of the leaderboards, right? So one of the problems with ELO is that, it tends to show its age. After a certain amount of time, it gets very difficult for players who are near the top of the rating to increase in rating because there's not enough rating to fight over at the top ranks, which I think is the reason why Wizard went to the more flat system they have now, if I recall correctly. I wasn't on Wizard at the time, but I recall the conversations. But I think that with more regular resets, we can actually use a more true ELO system. So back to the top, tier, rank, and then rating. Then we'll sort the players by level or level band, right? So, the level 30 players will be matched up against other players who were in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, all the way through. And then we have other criteria, if it's even necessary. Now, we've already now segregated players by tier, rank, and rating, and level. Beyond that, we can look at other things to create what we would consider to be great matches. So, things like streak. How many times has this player won their last 10 matches? Right, so players who have won a lot in the past 10 matches will tend to get matched against other players who have won a lot in the last 10 matches. That's something that we added to the matchmaking system in Beast Moon, by the way. After that, we may go with matches played, and matches played might be something that we look at on an account base, right? So when we go to see players who have played a lot of matches, we're not even looking at a particular wizard. I'm looking at Blake's account, and I'm saying, okay, he's got 6-7 wizards, and he's played, how many matches have you played, Blake? 5,000,
Yeah, a lot of matches. A lot of matches. Yeah.
We'll try to match players who have played a lot of matches against each other, as opposed to matching, people who just maybe trying PvP for the first time aren't typically going to be matched up against those players. So there's a lot of criteria that we use, and then once we sort all the players into these criteria, you should see some great matches. The one thing that I want to look at very carefully is the concept of matching players across tiers. So a very high-ranked tier 1 player might get matched with a low-ranked tier 2 player, for example.
Right.
This player, I'm playing without crits, but I'm very high-ranked. I'm a very skilled player. I might decide to punch up into rank 2, and you'll give me a rank 2 opponent. So that's something that we're looking at. It may be something that the lower ranked player gets to opt into. So we'll let the players know, hey, we can't find you a great match right now, but we have a player over here who's a higher rank than you. Do you want to take this match or not? And so the lower ranked or lower tier player gets his choice of whether to take that match or not. and then if they take that match, we might have to look into some ways that we can weight the rating exchange in those matches. But I think that the way the matchmaking server should work, that those matches will tend to be actually fairly even. Given the differences that the player stats will have at those tier breaks.
Right.
So that's pretty much it. And I think for the most part, I'd like to avoid dividing the players into separate groups. So there's going to be, I mean, what I would expect to see is that I would expect to see, within a given tier, the highest level players are probably going to be at the top of the rating in their tier. So tier 3 encompasses players, for example, who might be level 100 and above. I would expect the highest ranked players in tier 3 to be closer to level 130 than level 100, right? Because they're going to have better gear. They're going to have structural advantages to that. And I guess my hope is that, when you cross that tier and you move in there as a level 100 and you're getting into PvP and you're getting beat, I would assume you'd be getting beat. You'll say, well, how can I make myself better? And the answer to that is go back to PvE and level up and get better gear. Now, that's assuming a sort of a worst case scenario. The ideal situation is we have enough population in the queue that the level 100s get matched with the level 100s, and it's just sort of sorts itself out. But at the end of the day, I don't mind necessarily. There will be some sort of stratification inside the ranks within a tier, and it's probably going to group around level and access to greater gear.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, and I like the concept, especially with seasons. I think an elo score, like a hidden elo score, would be really, really cool, because it would work really well with the season system. And I also I agree that it shouldn't be, we shouldn't be trying to split up the player base, but I do think allowing, especially like a player who's a lower level, for example, to opt in or opt out of a match that may be unfair. So I think that's a really cool idea. If you guys want to answer a couple community questions, what are you guys feeling?
I'm down for a little bit.
So did you guys find any community questions you want to talk about? If not, I have, I believe, 2 more questions on my list that we could go over.
So I saw somebody say, do you have plans to make team-based PvP more desirable? Yeah, obviously, with all the reworks and everything going on, the major thing is, first, though, we really got to get it balanced, right? We got to get that 5th age ready. We got to get, and the best way to do that is looking mainly at the 1v1. That's the clearest sort of comparison of, cross schools, cross balance, cross how the stats are all set up. And then from there, we can start branching out once we think we have that 1v1 flush and ready, start thinking about 2v2, 3v3, and 4v4, because, there may be systems in there that we may have to add some custom mechanics to sort of spice it up a bit, right? Because, a 2v2 plays very different from a 4v4.
Right.
And that's both a good thing, and fun for the community, but it's a very tough thing as a designer. And when you're trying to make a really balanced system, because some schools just excel in those 4v4s. I mean, you want your deaths in there, you want your fires in your 4v4s, whereas in 1v1s, death, as much as the community says they're terrible, they actually do fairly well, and they're quite on, I say average, they're actually average in 1v1, but when you check them into 4v4 matches, they're getting a lot more wins. So, things like that we want to keep in mind. But yeah, definitely, we can talk about ideas, and we'd love to hear feedback on the community, especially if you love 2v2s, what you like about it right now, what you dislike, what you'd love to see. I know the 4v4 community, they're hardcore too, smaller than most, but again, feedback. Don't get a lot of 3v3s, so we definitely have to look at that. You don't hear a lot of the 3v3 crew.
Right, yeah, it's mostly
they're either 2s or 4s.
Yeah, exactly.
But, the hope is we could see some 3v3s. And like I said, I think if we do those events like the decathlon, hosting a 2v2 tournament or a 3v3 tournament,
be a really cool idea, yeah.
Kind of cool, and then add some customization to it. So again, keep giving us feedback, but yeah, definitely on our radar.
Absolutely. That's fantastic, because I know a lot of people still like Team PvP, and I know a lot of people too would do it more if it was easier to do. Like, for example, if there was, some kind of event going on where you could, team up with people, as opposed to just, a random tournament that's scheduled, every week, right? So I think that would be a really cool idea and would incentivize more people to get back into Team PvP. Are there any other questions you guys found?
I found one. People were talking about the Kroger jewels. I did want to bring up that we have been rolling them out on the Scroll of Fortune. I think in the pretty close to the bottom. because we wanted to make them a little more available. We can look into other ways of getting them into game as well, but I just wanted to make sure y'all knew and take a look at there. I think 3 out of the 4 of them have been up already. The 4th one probably will be coming out in, the next couple seasons, and since they seem to be popular, we'll probably keep repeating that. So
that's very cool, yeah, because I know a lot of people want the Kroger card duels, especially the Brace one, and also recently the one for this month, actually, the Kai Focus. So that's really cool how you guys have been adding them into the Scroll of Fortune so that you can actually get it through the game by doing in-game events.
So I'll take one here. The question is, do you have any plans of returning Mega Snacks that can be purchased with arena tickets? Which I think we can summarize from the chat as Warlord Worst.
Yes, yes, everyone's asking about that.
So I mean, the short answer is that we need to look at the economy behind it. I mean, there are so many arena tickets out there. I think what people would like to know is that will there be a free-to-play way to earn some more efficient snacks? And so the answer for that is yes. We'll find ways to do that. The Warlord's Worst itself, when we looked at the way that players were amassing the arena tickets, and when we looked at the number of Warlord's Worsts that were being used, it was clear to us that there was a giant faucet of sausage faucet, and so
yeah, it was the most consumed snack of all time by far.
Wow!
By a very small amount of players. So
that's really interesting, actually. Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, clearly, when we see that, we understand that it's something that players need. And so we'll look for ways that we can bring back, efficient snacks for you. We are not done with the changes from the pets that we made from the spring update, right? We got a lot of feedback from the players on that. And, there were some things that we could adjust immediately, that we did adjust immediately. And there's some things that are going to take us a little bit more time to do, to accommodate what the players are looking for. So we certainly haven't closed the book on, all things to do with the pet economy, whether it's the hatching costs or the hatching timers or the snack costs, all those things. We are still looking at those, and we're going to try to give you the right answers at the right time with those. So we're not done tweaking those, and I can confidently say that we'd like to find a way to bring back more free-to-play ways for players to get snacks. And of course, because we want players to play PvP, it makes natural sense for us to put something like that onto the PvP vendors, so that players who are doing PvP as their primary activity, so they don't have to go do something else, right? They can do the thing they want to do to get those things. So the short answer is, whether it's Warlord's Worst or not, we'll try to find a way to bring back free-to-play snacks when we can do it in the right way.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea because I know a lot of people train their pets exclusively with Warlord Worst, and because of how important making pets is, especially, you might want to have different pets for a certain level or a certain character. I think that would be a really cool feature to add just more ways in game to get snacks in a free-to-play way, or if people prefer to get their snacks through PvP as opposed to, gardening or doing PvE stuff. I think that would be a really cool idea. So do you guys have any more questions that you found from the chat that you'd like to go over?
It wasn't a question, but it's sort of that just spamming of Warlord Wars. The nerf of Freet spam, I believe it is.
Yes.
Question in regards to the balance of the fire spell, Ifrit, I believe. Like I said, we are looking at the shadow balance, the shadow enhanced and shadow spells first, especially for PvP. That does not mean that regular spells are off the chopping block as well. I am aware of Ifrit. I am very much aware of that and a few others listed. Earthquake is another option in terms of its infinite removal, AoE. Those are things that are on the radar, so we're definitely looking at them. Like I said, the process of, as we mentioned, in the past, what we're doing is we're slowly rolling out these changes bit by bit instead of a complete overhaul, because if we change too much, it's hard to remember, find out what we did right and what we did wrong in some situations.
Right.
So we have stat rebalance is priority. We have the matchmaking coming. We have the shadow enhanced spells and shadow spells themselves, and then we're gonna start thinking about I do want to do a full spell audit. I've been hounding Ben about being able to do it, but looking at those higher rank spells and those regular standard non-shadow spells for balance, and that includes Ifrit, et cetera, et cetera. So if you've spammed it in here, we know it's
yeah, they
problem,
know.
so.
They know, guys.
So
But I agree. Yeah, I think definitely just a full like auditing all the spells would be a fantastic idea, and I'm really excited for the changes that are coming to the game, and especially being able to test it out in test realm, which will be coming to the game in the next few weeks, guys. So I'm really excited for that, and I can't wait to try out all the new changes with shads and just see what happens to the spells. So that's really cool.
Well, I hope that I've asked Professor Falmea for us to get more opportunities to play with the meta, basically. So,
Right.
It's a long stretch between major milestone updates, whether it's spring, summer, fall, winter. Even those seem long to me when we're talking about PvP. And so, I'd like to find a way for us, if possible, to get more tweaks in there, so that when we hear from the PvP players that there's something that's concerning them in the meta, that we at least have an opportunity to change that. But now I will also say that most of the noise that we hear from meta tends to happen right after we make changes, and it takes people a while to figure out that there are workarounds and ways to get around that. So
Right.
Don't expect us to make a knee-jerk decision on anything, but I will say that we want to curate this meta. I think keeping it fresh is a way to keep PvP humming.
Definitely, I agree. I think just keeping up with the meta and just keeping that like fresh is really good, and that's going to incentivize people to keep playing and not get tired of the game or think that the meta is stale or never changing.
I'm looking at Ifrit though. I think the Ifrit brought it home.
Yeah, people really have opinions about Ifrit. I would say that the two biggest cards by far that people have an opinion on is Ifrit and Weaver, for sure, in the game right now.
Oh yeah, Weaver's in the docket, and there may be changes to this test round. So just keep your eyes.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
That'll
be in the next few weeks. Yeah.
And as Rapier mentioned, changes can go up and down. We need to balance for the game mechanics itself, and then how it actually measures in practice. And what's awesome is that you guys as a community are the best at giving us feedback. You don't pull punches. You tell us. You let us know.
Right.
We monitor. We listen. We gauge that, and we are aware. But don't think just because we didn't change something we're not listening. Always feel free to speak up. But we will let you know. That hey, Weaver and these guys, we're looking at them. We're going to make changes, and if we overtune it again, we will know, but let us know, and we can dial things back. Just because something gets nerfed or something gets buffed doesn't mean it's going to stay that way forever. Right. It's all how it's all about aiming for balance across, the PvP community, across all the schools, and that's our main focus. We don't play favorites with schools or anything. Sometimes it looks like it, but when we buff a school, it's because we know that they're struggling, and so they're kind of the underdog.
Right.
So it's things to keep in mind. But yeah, we really appreciate it.
The last thing I'd add to that is, typically when we have these conversations with players, they tend to sort of see things in isolation, right? So you'll say, well, you can't change this because Pierce doesn't work, or you can't change this because resist is too high. And you have to keep in mind that we're not looking at this as a process of fixing one thing only to have it be broken in another place. So we're looking at a lot of changes to the game all at once. And so some of the things that we know that you guys are telling us are broken, we just can't get to those yet because they touch on a lot of other things. So I mean, resist is a perfect example. We can't talk about changing resist until we look at damage and health and pierce and crit, and because resist, I mean, it's everything. And so some of these problems are more complicated than we can fix in a short time frame. Thankfully, I think Shadow Pips, the fix that we have for Shadow Pips, is good and was something that we could sort of carve off into its own thing, and it was something that players were asking about. So that was sort of, I wouldn't call it low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of work that went into it, but it was nice to be able to do that. Now, because we couldn't get to resist, now resist is, man, it's top of my list, and I'm really intent on fixing that one. I wish I had a timeline that I could share with people to say when we're going to get to that, but I would just caution players, don't look at any one particular change and assume that everything else in the game is remaining the same. Because if we change something, for example, we changed Shadow Pips, well, we went back and, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, you changed every mob in the game. So, nothing gets changed in isolation. We're looking at the entirety of the game. And so just keep in mind that when you see these changes, we're trying to think ahead to the other places that these changes will have, will be felt, where their impact will be, and we won't get them all. And so, we certainly appreciate feedback from you guys. And so if we've missed something, don't hesitate to tell us. But I would say, just reserve judgment on some of the changes that we're discussing until we have a chance to see the whole picture. And I'm super excited about the whole picture being 5th age, right? So when we get everything fixed, I'm going to get back into PvP in 5th age, right? I mean, no question about it. People keep asking me, why am I not PvPing? And then they'll turn around and tell me in the same breath how horrible PvP is right now because it's so frustrating. So, well, that's why I'm not. You guys, the message is received loud and clear. Right. PvP is a frustrating environment. I like to run around with my first age, I forget, first age captain badge over my head because I have done PvP. But it's been a long time since I did PvP, and I have a lot of work to do before I can get in there. But as both as a dev and as a player, right? I have a lot of work as a player to do before I can get in there. But you will see me in PvP, as these changes are coming through, and certainly in 5th age because I'm a highly competitive person. So right. I'm looking forward to it. As a nerd and a player, I'm looking forward to it every bit as much as I am as a dev, and hopefully handing over something that you guys are going to love and we're going to be proud of.
Hey, this is Spark. I see a lot of chat. A lot of questions that are more general questions about the game, other topics. Save those questions, everyone. We're going to be announcing next week's KI Live tomorrow. And with that, we usually also mention on Twitter and Facebook and in the official forums asking for your questions for that show. And we'll always select a few questions there. So if you didn't get your question answered today, go ahead and wait for that announcement tomorrow.
Yep, if you guys have any questions, they'll post it on Twitter, and you can just tweet at them or any of the other ways to contact them and just ask questions, because KI Live is going to be next week, Thursday, 4 p.m. Central. And real quick, I just wanted to say, I think the test room is going to be fantastic, and I'm really excited to test it out. I don't know if you guys have this planned or not, but I think a really cool thing to do would be to add some kind of, how you have the special events that go on? You could do that in the test realm. So you could reward people that do test out the game in test realm to give you guys more data, more feedback, analytics, that kind of thing. I think it would be really cool if you added some kind of reward system for players that do it in the test room, so they don't feel like they're missing out. Oh, I did test room for a week when I could have been doing it in the live game. So if you guys have any intention of adding some kind of reward system for people that try out the test room and do PvP, I think that would be a fantastic idea as well, if that is possible.
That's an interesting idea. We can certainly talk about it. One of the other things sort of related to that on a community front that we're trying to do is make your time more efficient, especially in these events, PvP group events where you need to find others. And maybe you're, at a time where there's not as many people interested in that event. Well, we want to help with that. So we've, like our new event calendar that we just announced on the official website a few weeks ago, we have dates and times in there specific to, like, say, the Beast Moon Hunt. So it's not, you don't have to just play during that time, of course, but it's a time where you can maybe find a few more people to play with. And so we're looking at those angles as well.
I think part of with Test Realm too, and the have sort of focus testing, we're going to try to laser focus people on certain aspects. And Ben mentioned this too, with some of the changes taking forever, one of the, it's a little under the hood, but switching over Shadow Pip percentage to Shadow Pip rating, I had to adjust 3,000 pieces of gear and over 1,200 mobs and for balance. Wow. So, and we have to have and QA has to test those to make sure that when I'm switching over stats, there's no mistakes and that gear hasn't changed, right? So we're going to rely on you guys a lot more, in giving us that focused feedback. So sort of stuff like that's super important. And a lot of the under the hood stuff, I like to share with you guys because it's just interesting, I find, and you don't always know. But part of the thing is we've been working on some tools because when we do test run, you guys are awesome. We get so much feedback, we can't keep up with how much feedback comes through because of how much you guys help us with that. So we actually got some tools that help sort, organize, and prioritize feedback from the test realm for us to view and get your opinions and your feedback to to be actionable, and because there was just so much last test from you guys were amazing. We just got overwhelmed with the amount of
Yeah.
feedback.
Speaking of that, Matt, I guess we're sort of getting off on a tangent here, but this is really a cool thing that you've just talked about working on this too, but we've also added in the forums, and we're going to do this again for the next test round, is to have for all of you who visit our official forums, we'll have a pinned post at the top specific for this summer test round that we'll try to gather your topics, and it'll be one forum thread per topic. So, if there's like 5 topics, we might merge them together that are, the same thing. And that'll be a way that you can see, well, the devs are aware of this, and so I can move on. And so we're going to try that too.
That's a really good idea, and I'm super excited for this test round and just the new changes that are coming with 5th Age, and not just for PvP. I'm actually really excited for PvE too. So this summer should be a lot of fun, and I'm very excited to try out the new things that are coming to the game.
Yeah, we'll actually be announcing another feature unrelated to PvP and showing it off on KI Live next week. So definitely tune in and check that out.
That is awesome. Yeah, I know for sure I will be there watching. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about, or any other questions you wanted to answer?
I think I hit most of it.
Yeah,
I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say thank you to your community for all the great questions and for hanging out with us and chatting with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a fantastic stream. And thank you guys for coming through to the stream and answering these questions. I think it really, a lot of the questions that we covered today have just been like big topics and questions in the community that haven't been answered for a while. So it's really nice to have that communication,
Oh, no. I appreciate it.
Yep,
The effort that you did, the community does, that your moderators did. You guys did an awesome job. And, you're setting the precedent, which is good, which means if these are successful, and like you said, it seems like the community loves this, that we can hopefully do more of these about all types of aspects of the game in the future.
Right, yeah, that'd be really cool. Not just PvP related things. Alrighty, so I guess that's it for today, right?
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, thanks so. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming to the stream. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, thank you guys, and I guess that's it for today.
Take it easy.
Awesome.
Awesome. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.